All right, let's talk about a story you probably think you know inside and out. But what if I told you there's a puzzle hidden in plain sight for millennia? We're about to pull back the curtain on one of the most famous books ever written and uncover an ancient conversation happening just beneath the surface. So, our journey starts with a story that's, a cultural cornerstone, Noah's Ark. But here's the thing, as we're about to see, this familiar tale, it's packed with some really strange contradictions that just don't add up.
I mean, you know the basics, right? The guy, the boat, all the animals, the giant flood. Seems pretty straightforward. But when you actually sit down and read the text closely, the details, they start to fall apart. The whole narrative seems to double back on itself, giving you conflicting information that just doesn't line up at all. And this is where it gets really weird. I mean, look at this. In the very same chapter, we're told the flood lasted 40 days, and then a few verses later, 150 days. Noah's told to grab 2 of every animal, but then he's also told to take 7 pairs of the clean ones. It's not an either-or situation. Both of these conflicting accounts are literally woven together into the final text we have today.
So, you gotta ask, what is going on here? For centuries, people have been scratching their heads about this. Are these just sloppy editing mistakes? Did a scribe fall asleep on the job? Or is there a deeper reason for these contradictions? Well, it turns out the real answer is way more fascinating than just a simple mistake.
Okay, to crack this puzzle, we actually have to leave the Bible behind for a minute. We need to take a trip way back in time to ancient Mesopotamia and dust off a much, much older story. And believe me, this story holds the key to understanding Genesis.
So say hello to the Epic of Gilgamesh. This isn't just any old story, it's one of the oldest works of literature in the entire world. A truly magnificent epic poem all about a Sumerian king's quest for immortality. And buried deep within its ancient clay tablets are stories that are shockingly, almost unbelievably similar to the ones we find in Genesis.
And this is the kicker. Check out this timeline. The Epic of Gilgamesh isn't just a little older than Genesis. We're talking over 1,000 years older. This isn't a case of 2 stories just popping up around the same time. One is clearly the elder statesman here, the cultural bedrock that was around long before the Bible was ever put to paper.
All right, let's get into our first major clue and see exactly how this works. We're going to start right at the beginning with the Bible's very first man, Adam, who, it turns out, has a stunning parallel in a wild man from the Epic of Gilgamesh.
So when Gilgamesh the gods create this wild man, his name is Enkidu, and his origin story, it's practically a mirror image of Adam's. Both are formed from the earth, both live in this state of pure primitive innocence, and they both live in total harmony with the animals. The setup is basically identical.
Okay, but this is the crucial part. This is where we can literally see a debate happening across the centuries. The act that changes them is totally different. For Enkidu, wisdom comes from a 7-day sexual encounter with a woman, but for Adam and Eve, it comes from an act of moral disobedience, eating the fruit. You see what's happening? The biblical author is using the exact same story structure, but they've swapped out the main event to make a radical new point about what it means to be human.
Now just listen to this. In Gilgamesh, after his big week with the woman, she tells Enkidu that he's become wise, like a god. His transformation is explicitly linked to a physical, civilizing act.
And then bam, in Genesis, you hear an echo of that exact phrase. God says the man has become like one of us. But the reason couldn't be more different. It's not about sex. It's about gaining moral knowledge by breaking a divine rule. It's an intellectual and moral change, not a physical one. It's a total reframe.
Okay, you think that was close? The parallels are about to get even more intense, and the argument even clearer when we look at the flood stories. Seriously, this is where the similarities are so precise, there's just no way they can be a coincidence.
Just look at this. The plot is unmistakable, and it works for both Noah in Genesis and this guy, Utnapishtim, in Gilgamesh. A divine council decides to flood the world. One hero gets chosen to be saved. He's given instructions to build a massive boat. He saves his family and all the animals. The boat lands on a mountain, and he sends out birds to check for dry land. It is the exact same story, beat for beat.
But again, and this is the whole point, just like with Adam and Enkidu, the reason for the flood changes everything. In the Mesopotamian version, the gods are basically just annoyed because humanity is too loud and keeping them up at night. They're petty, they're capricious, but in Genesis, God acts because the world is filled with violence and corruption. It's a moral judgment, not just divine irritation.
I mean, listen to this quote from a related Mesopotamian myth. Humanity's greatest sin, the reason they almost got completely wiped out, was that we were too noisy. We were literally keeping the gods from getting their beauty sleep.
So the biblical writer hears that story and offers this powerful counterargument. The problem wasn't noise, it was injustice. It wasn't about the comfort of the gods. It was about the moral fabric of creation itself. And that, right there, changes everything.
Okay, so now the bigger picture is starting to come into focus, right? Those weird contradictions in the Noah story, they're not mistakes. And the similarities to Gilgamesh, not a coincidence. They are the entire point of the whole thing.
You know, scholars actually have a name for this technique. It's called a polemic. Think of it like this. It's like doing a cover of a famous song. You keep the melody that everybody recognizes, but you change the lyrics completely to argue against the original song's message. You're using a familiar framework to make a radical new point.
So what was the game plan here? Well, the authors of Genesis were deep in a debate, but they were using stories to do it. They took these massive cultural epics that everyone in the ancient Near East knew by heart, and they systematically changed them to argue for a completely different vision of the world, one that wasn't run by the whims of petty, squabbling gods, but by a single, just, and moral creator.
So, this is the main takeaway. This isn't plagiarism, it's a theological revolution disguised as a really good story. The writers were intentionally adapting these famous narratives to make a powerful case for their unique understanding of God, humanity, and morality.
And once you see this dynamic, this back and forth argument, it completely changes how you read these foundational texts. They stop being just simple myths, and they become part of this vibrant, ancient conversation.
And this perspective really reveals a text that is so much more complex and intentional than it looks on the surface. It's answering the biggest questions of all. What is the divine world like? Is it arbitrary and self-serving, or is it governed by justice and righteousness? The authors of Genesis basically took the stories of their neighbors and used them to shout their definitive answer from the rooftops.
And you know, that leaves us with a pretty cool final thought. If this profound debate is woven right into the fabric of Genesis, shaping the stories of creation and the Great Flood, it really makes you wonder, what other ancient arguments, what other rewritten histories are hiding in plain sight in the stories we thought we knew so well?